Imagine you had to fight a dinosaur every time you wanted a meal. For about 2.5 million years, this was the reality that T-Rex had to face. And prey animals don't go down without a fight. Today, the top predators on the savanna, the lions, the leopards, the hyenas, they all face prey animals that have in turn become just as dangerous. And this is a theme that has gone on throughout prehistory of megafauna. The Cretaceous equivalent to our king of the jungle was the tyrant lizard king, T-Rex. This terrifying carnivore was one of the largest predators to ever walk on land, and yet it too had its demons. In this video, we're going to look at the difficult T-Rex diet. We're going to look at evidence that there are animals that might have kept Rexy awake at night, and we're going to finish up with one animal that we know for sure could have put T-Rex in its place through battles that would have been absolutely horrifying to behold. First, let's start with the nose horns. Ceratopsian dinosaurs were some of the last of the large herbivorous dinosaurs, and they would have been extremely prevalent and widespread through the Cretaceous. Over 60 genera have been identified so far, and these guys thrived for almost 100 million years across what is now North America, Asia, and Europe. They're well known for their glamorous headgear, and, as the scientific name implies, the horns on their faces. This is the group that Triceratops belonged to, and its species ranged in size from around a meter long all the way up to the 9-meter, 11-ton heavyweights like Eoceratops. There were many in Cretaceous North America, and this would have been prime hunting grounds for T-Rex, who definitely tried to eat them. But much like modern carnivores, ancient hunters probably would have aimed for the juveniles, or the elderly, or otherwise incapacitated individuals, and this would have helped to shift the odds in their favor. So T-Rex may not have considered an adult Triceratops an easy meal, but a large and powerful herbivore like this would have made a very dangerous mother to contend with. And there's a lot of strong evidence that Triceratops, or at least the very slightly smaller Triceratops, did engage in battle with T-Rex occasionally and survive. Triceratops fossils have been found with very clear signs of tyrannosaur tooth marks on them, and the fact that some of these wounds have healed is a sign that this wasn't a case of simple predation, or even scavenging on a carcass. This was a sign that T-Rex had engaged in battle with the Triceratops, and the Triceratops had survived. One particular fossil find, potentially called a snapshot in time of such a battle, is nicknamed Dueling Dinosaurs, and it appears to show the mutual destruction of a Triceratops horridus and a T-Rex. Both had fatal wounds, both were buried in the sediment together. The Triceratops with T-Rex teeth embedded in its spine, and the T-Rex itself with many of its teeth broken or missing. If these are indeed the remains of an epic battle, it just goes to show how dangerous both of these animals would have been in combat with one another. And while the Ceratopsians were heavily defended at the front, other giant herbivores sported serious weaponry at both ends. Ankylosaurs were around for only slightly less time than the Ceratopsians, and these would have likely been less nimble, slower, and closer to the ground than Triceratops. While this may have made them more appealing to a giant predator like T-Rex, the reality is that they may not have been any easier to tackle. First of all, these were heavily armored animals, but they also sported a 20-kilogram sledgehammer at the back, attached to their body with a tail that was like the batting arm of the Hulk. Not only were bones in the skull and neck fused for extra rigidity, but the tendons in the tail were partially ossified, allowing for a highly efficient transmission of power from the enormous muscles to the giant swinging club. A whack from these could have shattered bones, and could probably have proved lethal to any T-Rex unlucky enough to take one to the ribs or the legs. This was a heavy animal, up to 8 tons, and it packed a serious punch. And it would have been patrolling the same feeding grounds as the North American T-Rex around about the same time at the tail end of the Cretaceous. But as we'll see at the end of this video, T-Rex would have been a very difficult animal to finish in a fight. So stick around for that, and before we get to the next animal, we'd just like to remind you that your participation can really help this channel. And all it requires is a couple of clicks. So if you're enjoying this video, please hit the subscribe button for more of them and click on the like button to help us reach more viewers. Now, not all of Rexy's demons would have come covered in armor. Hadrosaurs were some of the most successful dinosaurs that ever existed. Until recently, they were considered semi-aquatic, but this has since been disputed. They certainly weren't armored like our previous examples, and they would have provided plentiful protein for the hungry predators at the time, as long as they were big enough. Edmontosaurus was a beast of a hadrosaur. a facultative quadruped, meaning that it would have cruised around heavily on all fours, but could have up and run on two legs when pursued, and so it's thought to have been significantly faster than T-Rex. But it wouldn't have been running away that made it so scary. This was a robust animal, a big one to boot. One fossil showed a powerful 7.5-meter tail, indicating a total length of about 15 meters, and suggesting a weight of around 10 tons. This could have been thick and meaty like a hippo, and it carried neural spines on its back, which suggests that it could have looked even bigger than it actually was. Edmontosaurus was commonly found alongside Triceratops in Hell Creek. The one curious mystery is where they all went. Fossils suggest that this large dinosaur was even less prevalent than its predators, and this goes against basic ecological principles. Still, fossils aren't that reliable when it comes to measuring abundance, as animals that avoided silt and mud were far less likely to be preserved. What we do know is that this hadrosaur had a thick, powerful tail and a pair of club-like mittened hooves at the front. The tail had heavy musculature at the base, and it was strong yet flexible at the end. Fossils also show common injuries to the tail and to these hooved feet, suggesting they could have been used as weapons in defense.
So Edmontosaurus may have been quite fine without the armor, and been able to keep T-Rex at bay with just its tail and feet. This was, admittedly, one of the larger hadrosaurs, and size is definitely an intimidating position to be in over a predator.
Just ask the Allamosaurus. Allamosaurus was a North American titanosaur. It became one of the commonest Cretaceous dinosaurs in North America, and it was likely the largest ever to roam those lands. It was a lesser-known titanosaur, but not far off the size of the much more famous Argentinosaurus. It was first discovered in the 1920s, but its size didn't become apparent until more fossils were found in the 2000s. On average, Allamosaurus was around 26 meters long and 5 meters tall at the shoulder, and it's thought the larger individuals may have reached 30 meters long and up to 88 tons, around 10 times the mass of many T-Rexes. Allamosaurus had incredibly long tails as well, and these would have acted more like whips than the clubs of its smaller counterparts like Ankylosaurus. As well as having enormous size and powerful weaponry on their side, fossilized scutes suggest that they may have been pocked with spiked armor of their own, all over their bodies. Perhaps, much like elephants, the enormous adults would have aggressively defended their slow-growing young from anything dumb enough to get close. Like all titanosaurs, they have the highest rates of damage to their tails, and these are consistent with force-based trauma. Some bites did get through, though, as fossils also show healed wounds from the teeth of a T-Rex. Being hungry as the Cretaceous' top predator can't have been easy, but it wasn't their prey animals that presented the worst of the dangers to T-Rex. Stan, a T-Rex fossil from Hell's Creek, is one of the most complete T-Rex fossils found, and it shows a horrifying glimpse of what life must have been like for the world's scariest terrestrial animal. Far from being the undisputed king, Tyrannosaurus rex would have had a lot of dissidents, the worst of whom would have come from its own species. Stan's skull is the most complete of any T-Rex found, and it is covered in scars. Its body, too, shows injuries consistent with damage from a member of its own kind, and these injuries are horrific. Broken ribs with T-Rex teeth holes in them, a smashed jugal bone, a broken neck, and even a pierced brain case, all at the hands, or teeth, of a conspecific. To be clear, Stan had his neck broken and his skull pierced, and he survived. It really makes you wonder what the other guy looked like. If Stan emerged as the victor in this fight, it's likely the loser would have been eaten. It's becoming very obvious from fossils that T-Rexes would have never passed up a free meal, even if it was a member of its own species. But from Stan's battered remains, it's also obvious that a T-Rex was at least as tough as the animals that it hunted, and since its prey would never have been stupid enough to seek out a T-Rex, the intraspecific rivalries that it would have had to deal with meant that the only animal that truly gave T-Rex nightmares would have been another T-Rex. Thanks so much for watching. See you again next time.